In 1960, 5 prominent Democrats were candidates for the nomination. They would travel different roads in seeking the nomination. 2 would battle it out in the primaries. 2 would hope to be the choice by compromise. And 1 hoped to be drafted. Adlai Stevenson relied on a draft. Though he had twice lost the presidency to Eisenhower, he was still most popular with rank-and-file Democrats. Lyndon Johnson of Texas had been majority leader of the Senate for most of the Eisenhower years. He was a strong possibility as a compromise candidate, as was Missouri Senator Stuart Symington, a man with no political enemies and the favorite of ex-President Harry Truman.
The first few ballots that I'll get it myself.
Minnesota's liberal Senator Hubert Humphrey had farm and labor support and a winning record. He would enter the primaries against the front-runner, John F. Kennedy. Senator Kennedy was burdened by many handicaps. He seemed too young and inexperienced to be entrusted with the presidency, and he was a Roman Catholic in a predominantly Protestant nation. In his favor, he had great personal charm, a large family fortune, and the best political organization ever put together. The nucleus of that organization was the Kennedy family, led by Robert Kennedy and Larry O'Brien. In the Democratic Party, the big city leaders are of special importance because they often have the power to swing the large blocks of delegate votes that are needed to win the nomination. It was chiefly to impress these leaders that Kennedy entered the primaries. By winning, he would prove that Protestants would vote for a Catholic for president. JFK outlined this strategy when he told how he would win the votes of the major non-primary states of New York, Pennsylvania, and Illinois.
It's comparatively useless to go to those 3 states today. If they had primaries, then I would think you could fight it out directly. Lacking primaries, it has to be won in New Hampshire and these other states. By end of May, when the primaries are over, the next candidate of the Democratic Party will be very obvious. I would say that the road to Paris is through Peeping, and the road to those delegations is through the primaries in the states that do have them.
Entering the primaries assured Kennedy of the coverage that would make him a national figure. Besides, JFK honestly believed in the primary system.
I'm running in 7 primaries across the United States, and I think primaries get the people to participate in the selection of a candidate. I'm a great believer in the system. I think this power must remain with the people.
Senator Humphrey also accepted the risk of entering primaries, but he doubted their worth.
No candidate will be nominated at the Democratic Convention simply because he wins some primaries.
The candidates met head-on in Wisconsin. From the beginning, Humphrey's campaign was crippled by a lack of funds.
So we ran no ads except one. In the Milwaukee paper, we ran one ad 2 weeks before the election, simply because we didn't have the money.
The Kennedy organization did not sweep Wisconsin. The leaders were not convinced.
We didn't do quite as well in Wisconsin as the pundits had suggested that we should do or would do. We won. We carried a majority of the congressional districts and, of course, carried the state. We still had to prove our case, and that brought us to the crunch in West Virginia.
West Virginia was 95% Protestant. Here, the Kennedys must rise or fall. They mounted an all-out effort. By this time, Humphrey had run out of money altogether. Senator Humphrey, in his own words, was a corner grocer running against a chain store.
If I'd had the means, I think I was prepared to wage a campaign that would have been one of the most effective of my life, because I learned a great deal out of the Wisconsin primary. We were ready to go, but frankly, we ended up Wisconsin $17,000 in debt. We had to start out in West Virginia with little or no money. We borrowed our first monies. I had to put my physical body against tremendous money and organization. My opponent, and I don't say this critically, but he conducted a campaign that was not only well organized, but extravagantly financed, and it'll have its effect.
The Kennedys had their troubles, too.
We had a poll that showed that we were going to lose significantly in West Virginia. The religious issue had become paramount.
John Kennedy met the issue head-on.
The really critical issues facing this country. We'll waste his franchise and throw away his vote by voting either for me or against me because of my religious affiliation.
JFK won the big primary. He carried Protestant West Virginia. The big city Democratic leaders were now impressed. In Los Angeles, the candidates made the rounds of state delegation. Each candidate urged his own nomination, but the Kennedy lead seemed insurmountable. The job of the Kennedy organization was to hold on to its committed delegates. Adlai Stevenson still had not declared himself, but this did not dim the enthusiasm of his volunteers all over the country. A massive grassroots campaign was mounted even as Stevenson denied his own candidacy.
I am not a candidate for the nomination, but I deeply care about the issues before my party and the nation, and I intend to speak in support of a liberal program as forcefully as I can in the weeks ahead, as I have always done.
The Stevenson forces had packed the galleries and stormed the floor. But there was little support for him among the delegations and none from the big state leaders. Stevenson himself received a tremendous ovation when he appeared on the floor. Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt urged his selection.
If we really want to win in November, I think we will nominate a Stevenson-Kennedy ticket.
Senator Eugene McCarthy nominated Stevenson. It was with this speech that McCarthy first attracted national attention.
Son of 50 states. This favorite son, I submit to you, Adlai Stevenson of Illinois.
But the Kennedy organization had the commitments, and the Kennedys were on the floor to see them honored. Governor Orville Freeman of Minnesota nominated Kennedy.
It is to a fruitful America, to a peaceful world for mankind everywhere, is the great senator from the state of Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy.
The big city leaders cast their big blocks of votes for Kennedy. Daley of Illinois,
61.5 votes for John Kennedy.
Wagner of New York,
Chairman, Wagner, chairman of the delegation. Senator Johnson, 3 1/2 votes. Senator Kennedy, 104.5 votes.
Finally, a small state gives JFK the nomination.
Mr. Chairman, Wyoming's vote will make a majority for Senator Kennedy.